The top LGBTQ mid-sized cities to consider for retirement. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
I said it would never last. It's Tim Bennett here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. 15 years. We're now in 2023. We can safely say 15 years, John. We started
we have
in
been
2008.
Successfully broadcasting. Yeah, I know.
They said we would never last.
Well, you know who told you that, who offered you a job? That
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart.
Who I don't think lasted a year. And she grabbed me by the hand or the wrist and hand on the elbow, which is very reassuring. When your show fails, that's what she said. When your show fails, I'll be
the
happy
hand
to
on
do
the
this.
elbow thing is something the socialites do when they lead you to
Yes.
your table. You're
Yeah.
here. And did you send the check in for $1 million to the organization? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, Martha, we have something coming. We do. I said, yes. I said, I'm going to have a show on Sirius XM. Oh, you are? And then she, of course, has to announce to the whole kitchen what she's doing. But then she says to me, when your show fails. Can you imagine a nasty bitch?
Were you the only one allowed to keep your shoes on?
Yes, because I had white bucks on that had a crepe, the rubber crepe sole.
Rubber
She made
sole.
all the women with the high. I was the only guy.
Okay.
So she made all the women. Well, there was only 6 of us. It was the woman from French's Mustard or Gurkey Mustard or something, Liz Claiborne Conglomerate. And then Teresa, who worked at Subaru.
Oh, Teresa, I didn't know that she
Right.
was part of that group that went up. Okay, she
Yeah,
probably
the
had a
girls
fun
were in
time.
high heels. They had to take their high heels off. She says, you with the white bucks, you can keep those on. Meanwhile, she had dogs with unclipped nails running all over the house, all over the floor, sliding all over the place.
So was the notion of not having the shoes on related to
She didn't want to scuff the
putting
floors.
marks in the hardwood floor or
Yeah,
something?
she didn't want high heels would scuff up the floors, the heel or the whatever. And she didn't want any hard-soled shoes because they would have brought in, I don't know, grit or something. But no, she was fine with mine. And but meanwhile, then she had a chair. She had chairs with nails sticking out of them. Even her assistants were saying, "I told her to get rid of these chairs." People are ripping their clothes. So.
In other words, it was a highbrow event with a lowbrow presentation.
But that's what's highbrow, right? That's what's highbrow about it. It's the kind of relaxed comfort that you could only find at a place like Martha Stewart's and be okay that you just ripped your blazer, or ripped your dress, or ripped whatever because she had nails sticking out of these, tag sale chairs.
So this fits in with Bob. This is Bob's idea of highbrow, lowbrow.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be times when we have company and he'll say, "You can't sit in that chair," or "If you sit in that chair, don't lean back."
Might break. Yeah. It's Elisa Birnbach, who, if you listen to our holiday special we had on last week, but she talks about that kind of preppy thing. You use it until it's worn out.
Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. That's Bob's mother's motto.
Yeah, and think about all the rugs that were in vogue at Restoration Hardware, Pottery Barn, something. These threadbare rugs, Oriental sort of rugs. So that's the gig. But anyway, happy 2023, Mr.
Well, yeah, welcome to 2023 and our 15th year of producing the focus group. When we did the holiday specials, which we went back to the vault and got those 2 fishbowl shows,
Yeah.
It really did bring back a huge amount of memories, particularly the amount of work we put into pulling those parties off.
Yeah. and it wasn't supposed to be work, but it ended up being, for you and I, a lot more work than we ever thought. Because,
and for Katie and Bob too, because they became party throwers as well.
Yeah, we had the gift bags, and then we had to get the wine, and
candles, and was it year 2 was the Heaven Hill Challenge? I think was what was going into the those Manhattans. And I remember looking in the control booth and seeing Dave Gorab, who was at the time the VP of talk programming, lift one very full one up to his mouth and just kind of smile. And then he said later, after a Manhattan, he goes, "You guys throw the best parties." I'm like, "Yeah."
And what did that give us? And what's his name came along, the celebrity hawk.
Speaking of which, for the new year, what show did you watch? Because we thought Bob
they
and I
were all atrocious,
cringeworthy, right? Yeah.
And somebody actually said to me, they said, "You and John would do better than this."
Yes,
and, which we would, but nobody would give us a chance. But I thought So I guess because Andy made such an ass of himself last year, Andy
Drinking.
Cohen on
Yeah.
CNN, that they didn't allow them to drink, or they said they weren't going to drink.
Yeah.
Although he kept alluding to the fact that maybe they might have smoked something. He kept saying it was smoky there. But anyway, ha ha ha. But so we had that on. I was at our friends Mark and Carl's. We were there for dinner, and we said let's just turn it on and see if it goes off the rails like they did last year. And but it was boring. And then Andy had the stupid cards asking people stupid questions, which all the people seemed to be irritated by the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then they went to, and then we went over to the Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve, which
Do you know what Bob said to me?
I did see a rerun of something they did. David Byrne with Miley Cyrus singing "Let's Dance," which was
Looked
good,
entertaining.
Yeah, and Duran was on one of the shows. I forget which one.
Duran was on the Dick Clark.
Okay,
And
was okay.
Bob has a question about this from a branding perspective, and it was a smart question. I thought, I didn't have an answer for it. He asked me many questions I don't have answers for, but, that's the way that goes.
That's surprising.
What's the weather in Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
Why is it still called? First he says
I'm in touch with the past. Ask me anything.
How long how long has it been since Dick Clark passed away? And I said, I really don't know.
It's got to be 15, 20 years.
I really don't know. It's a great question. And the second one was, okay, if he's passed away, why are they still calling it Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve? And I think that must be a brand or a trademark issue.
Well, he must have earned something, right? So it's probably his production company, right?
Yeah.
And so the family's probably still getting money, is my guess.
Yes, and
He
you're
died
right.
in 2012. So he died 10 years ago. April 18th, 2012.
Decade ago. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve.
And it's rocket. So in 2032, will we be asking those same questions? We'll be saying, "Hey, why is
Who's
it still
Dick
called?"
Clark?
Yeah, who's he? Bandstand.
Bandstand. Yeah, no, or will it be? Because I guess they still run the Lawrence. Well, we don't do a Lawrence Welker and Ed Sullivan show, do we?
So let me no. Let me ask you something. If you and I did a New Year's Eve show, if we were what would it be, and how soon would you be on air before the countdown? Because let's be real, New Year's Eve is about the minute before
the countdown.
The countdown. That's it. That's the whole holiday, right?
And then as soon as that's done, people are packing up and going home. So there's no need to go for an hour or two beyond that, which some did.
No.
I would say you'd want to come on around either 10:30 or right after the 11 o'clock news in your local affiliate, and then you got a half hour and you have a fun time and talk about the year. You and I would probably need a good hour and a half or 2 hours, though. So I'd say maybe 10 o'clock East.
Really? Like, I think if we came on at 11 and we were out at 12:15, everybody would be thrilled.
But there's the news affiliates, right? The news you have to stick the news in there somewhere.
That's true.
Unless
That's
we're on
true.
cable.
We jumped
What cable
around
channel would we go on?
Well, okay, on that front, Bob and I jumped around a lot, and we ended up going to our local, the Spectrum News, right?
Right.
And we both howled with laughter because one of their correspondents, which we see normally kind of buttoned up and serious, was wearing a sparkly jacket and carrying on. And we're thinking, oh, here we go. Then I decided that the networks must just look at this and say, well, let's just have fun with it, right? And on CNN, I don't know if they did the shoe drop. Remember that used to always be
wasn't that in
Key West? Yeah.
They seem to have gotten rid of a lot of that. Now we're going to be in, East Overshoe, Wisconsin. Now we're going to be. I'm thinking, maybe this is a New Year's resolution. I didn't make any resolutions this year.
Neither did I this year.
But maybe our resolution will be we'll put together a New Year's show. And, we could buy that cable access. I mean, if you're flipping around, we're just as good to stop on as Andy and Anderson. Right?
It's true.
So we could do a cable access thing in New York and Philly and whatever and just buy the time for the half hour and stick us on.
Or you could do a live Facebook stream and maybe invite Aunt Barbara to join in and a few others.
That'd be fun.
And then you have all the comments happening and people chiming in. And now it's more interactive. And then I would definitely say that would be like 11 to 12:02. Like we could be really funny about that. 12:02 and 30 seconds.
Good night.
Out.
Show everybody
Click, it
running
goes
to the doors.
black. Yeah.
Well, would you do Facebook or would you do the TikTok?
How long can a TikTok? I thought TikTok was limited to length of stream.
No, they can go. They can go for a long time. People are
Oh,
on these
then
TikToks for a long time.
You know, you could do both. You could stream to both platforms
you?
simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. So I think this will be our New Year's resolution. You and I are going to do a New Year's show, and we need guests. So we're going to have to figure that out.
We could create our own guests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have a couple of wigs and a mustache floating around, you could go off camera, come back on as somebody. You can't get there from here. You come back. You wouldn't want Richard and Bob as guests because they would come on and say to the audience, everything you just heard is I'm going to tell you how it really went down, and then everybody's going to go to sleep.
That was still one of my favorite because I think Bob's first call to the show, I knew it was a matter of time before I'd have to call and correct the record.
It was his first call, and
Vegas.
he did call to correct the record. Yeah.
But your record was far better. You know, what Bob and Richard don't understand is you have to embellish. There's a thread of truth, right? There's a thread of truth, but you have to embellish to make it interesting. That's storytelling. Otherwise, it just becomes an event. You got to story tell. You want to bring people in. I don't need exact dates and times. I just want to have an idea of what happened. That's
as long as it happened on planet Earth, we're good. It doesn't matter about where.
You know, the author David McCullough, he passed away this year, and he had said that he said the biggest mistake people do in history is they try to get people to remember dates and times. He said that's not what history is about. History is about the people and what happened at that time and the story around that. He goes, whether it happened on April 3rd or April 7th or January 1st doesn't matter.
Correct.
It's really about what happened. So he said the date thing, memorizing dates and stuff is not really all that important in the scheme of things. So I agree with him. Hey, but speaking of people who have died, you had found an article you had said about a lot of celebrities who had passed away, but you had a different spin on it. So I'm going to turn this over to you that caught my eye this week. You're going to talk a little bit about who we lost or who died in 2022.
Yeah, some of the notables. So here we go.
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So the New York Times ran an interesting piece that was sort of interactive. You could actually sort by category. So you had, all people, arts and styles, books, business, music, politics, science, sports, stage and screen. And so I went straight to the business section, and I came up with a couple of people that I thought would be interesting to discuss between you and me, because many of us, people, if they weren't paying attention to obituaries, would not have known that they passed. Right. So one of the guys that passed away this past year, Alan Kay, 77, he was the ad man behind If You See Something, Say Something. I would say that in his obituary, so he created many memorable commercials, including one featuring a monk who works miracles with a Xerox copier. That might be more memorable to many than If You See. I mean, we know the phrase "If you see something, say something," but the Xerox commercials were, when I was growing up, were pretty memorable. He died of cardiorespiratory failure, and as I said, he was 77. He won 30 Clio Awards and was inducted into 2 advertising halls of fame. For his whimsical campaigns. He started an agency that Tim and I will remember. It's called Corey Kay and Partners. And Corey Kay was around for quite some time. I think it was 82 and forward, because his first was called Harper and Steers from 71 to 82, and then it was Corey Kay and Partners. Corey Kay had a lot of fun campaigns, a lot of cool clients. But Tim, in the obit, or in the write-up, they had this interesting thing that I think you'll appreciate. He says, he was quoted as saying, "We have 5 basic guidelines for developing advertising." And he was being interviewed by a man named Guy Kowalski for a book called How to Drive Your Competition Crazy, Creating Disruption for Fun and Profit, which came out in 95. And so Alan Kay said this: start with the customer, live with the client, uncover the obvious, keep it simple, and follow through. Now, tell me do you have to change any of these rules for 2023?
No.
Wouldn't you say that that's exactly what we do, how we operate our business?
Yeah, no, that's people forget that. And I the creatives in an agency are really the lifeblood, because without good creative, you have nothing, right? So, and you learned that in a number of agencies you've had. And I often wonder whether they're compensated correctly. So here's somebody like him who's come up with some very iconic campaigns. And probably, maybe he got a bonus. But I know over the years in agencies I worked for, people that had some brilliant work, and they would just get the regular paycheck, right? But in many cases would transform or turn a company around. Think of the guy who came up with Just Do It, right? With
the Wendy spots. Well, Just Do It is our next guy. So that would be Dan Whedon.
Dan
and
Whedon,
this agency.
Yep.
Sorry, you always correct me about that because the agency.
You want to play German.
Dan Whedon, 77. And so he was the ad man behind Nike's Just Do It fame. Whedon and Kennedy was his agency, and he died on September 30th this year at 77, so he died on my birthday, actually, and well known for that one thing. But Whedon and Kennedy also played footsie with Subaru many years ago, didn't they?
Well, huge failure. Yeah, I mean, a lot was written about that. So there's a book called Where the Suckers Moon, which is an advertising book, which it gets recommended to a number of people. It was written probably 20 years ago now. And it was funny. I just revisited it last year and read parts of it, knowing a lot of the players. But, Wyatt and Kennedy, because of their fame of doing so well with Nike and their location of Portland, Oregon at the time, and Subaru doing well in the Pacific Northwest, hired them to help the brand get back on its feet. And they came up with the, God, I'm even trying to remember what the campaign, What to Drive.
It was before all this stuff that we know about, right?
Right. It was What to Drive was what their tagline was. And the people at Subaru at the time wanted the Just Do It. Come give us Just Do It. Well, we all know that lightning in a bottle doesn't happen all the time. But they did What to Drive and wanted to make the car more of an appliance and a utility that wasn't all that important. And we know that buying a car is such an emotional connection. So they totally missed the boat on that. And it was a disaster. I mean, the whole campaign was absolute disaster, all the way down to the Super Bowl spots they used with Kirstie Alley, who had a friend
brand new, right? New to the whole scene.
Well, and she didn't want to do it. Her best friend committed suicide the day before. And they insisted she come in and do the read. So
Seriously?
Even in her voice, you could hear her, how sad she is. It was like the Subaru Impreza has a Ford.
I never knew that story before.
Yeah, no, her best friend committed suicide. They needed to get these spots done for the Super Bowl. They had the studio time booked.
Yep.
And she was obligated, and she's like, can you give me a little breathing time between this? And nope, you're obligated. And so she went in and delivered what you would expect to deliver when you're in that sort of mood.
When you're grieving, and you were in shock.
Mm-hmm. And then Wyatt and Kennedy went the traffic. There were 6 spots for the Super Bowl, if you can imagine. Trafficked them wrong. So the big reveal, which was supposed to be the last spot, showed up somewhere in the middle. It was all run out of order, and it on the USA Today poll came in 50 of 50 of the worst commercials. So Subaru never did the Super Bowl again. And Wyatt and Kennedy didn't stay around too much longer.
There you go, right? All right. Next on my list that I pulled off the Times list was Robert Toll, who died at the age of 81. And the tagline they had for him was mass producer of McMansions. So the minute I say that, many people will nod and say, "Oh, it's the Toll Brothers," because the Toll Brothers used to be a bellwether for the housing market. Like, what are they constructing? What are they doing? So he and his brother Bruce founded the home building company that created suburbia, basically, and the whole McMansion things. It says here Robert Toll, who with his brother built an eponymous, I never pronounced that word right, brand of luxury McMansions in the United States that became home to some 150,000 households. He died in Manhattan. The cause was Parkinson's, and he was 81. Wow. He grew up in a single-family Tudor-style home in suburban Philadelphia, initially pursued law as a career, and then ended up in, housing. Not only just housing, but in a major corporation that, basically built the housing. So kind of interesting.
Wow.
Next on the list, would you like to know?
Sure. And
you profiled him before, by the way, Tim. This is Herbert Kohler, plumbing mogul who created a golf mecca. Now, do you remember this at all from our, was it a Caught Your Eye or a business birthday?
It was probably a business birthday, is my guess. So what was his, what did they say his claim to fame was?
Kohler, let's see, who built a century-old business family business known for bathtubs, toilets, and faucets into a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise and turned a tiny company town into an unlikely stop for the world's top golfers.
Yeah, Wisconsin, right?
Is that what he did?
Yeah, it's the Kohler facility there, and it's above Green Bay, I believe, and it's or Sheboygan, and it is a unbelievable spot, and it's great to stay at the hotel there because everything's all this high end Kohler stuff. So everything's the sinks, the showers, everything is high end, and it's really quite cool. And Spike, my little dog Chihuahua, there's a Kohler commercial that he sings to, which I need to get a video of.
So that you can make him sing whenever you want.
Well, there's a guy that goes into the shower, and I forget the piece. It's a piece of classical music. But one day I'm sitting there with Spike several years ago, and this came on, and all of a sudden he was singing along with the TV commercial. And we couldn't believe it. And then we'd play it every once in a while. I'll put it on. He perks right up. He loves the sound of it, and then he'll go sing along with the classical piece of music. So, yeah, that's Spiky.
All right, our next one here is Romy Hunt Revson, known for, the drum roll please, the scrunchie.
Oh, God.
She died at 78, and a former nightclub singer, she developed the simple ornamental hair tie that quickly became a ubiquitous accessory.
Big rubber band covered in cloth.
Basically, and for me, the scrunchie is always going to be associated. Am I right about Seinfeld jumping on the scrunchie?
I don't know.
Wasn't there an episode where Elaine, wasn't she writing a book or something, and she was noticing that everybody from out of town wore one?
She may have. I might have missed that episode, but that does sound like it. I mean, they always took the most, innocuous thing and made a whole story out of it, so it could be. Remember, she had the sponges too, the sponge, the sponge episode.
So I'm going to say the next one here is a woman who passed away at 95, and her name is Ann Turner Cook. Now, you also profiled something similar, or you talked about her years ago. Do you happen to remember who she was?
No, Ann Turner Cook. Was she a banker?
Her likeness as an infant has graced the labels.
Okay.
Gerber Baby.
Gerber Baby.
She is the original Gerber Baby. She was painted when she was a little child, and she became the face of Gerber. I mean, you can't, she had a whole
Once you do that,
life.
what do you do? Where do you go from there, right? So she becomes famous as the Gerber Baby at 1.
Yeah.
And then you're 8 years old. And I used to be the Gerber Baby. I mean, you're saying that your whole life, right?
That's her legacy. Her legacy was set in stone as a child, which is just kind of fascinating when you think about it. All right, let's see what else I got here. This one was interesting, and it's Regine, only one name, or only one word, Regine, and she was the founder of, let me get her up here, proprietor of the world's first discotheque. Credited with opening the first disco, she built an empire of glittering playgrounds for the beautiful people in Paris, New York, and beyond. I love the way they do that. Paris and New York. And everywhere else.
Does it say New York where she had the disco? I wonder what she did.
I'm looking down here to see if I can see where where her first disco was.
I wouldn't even know. What Studio 54 was a disco, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
New York City and Limelight. Limelight was more 80s though, wasn't it?
Yes, most certainly, yeah.
And the Roxy and all those.
She danced with Gene Kelly. I'm looking here, Robin Leach Chronicle. Remember Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. We should have that start playing again. That's let's see, Regine at the debut of her nightclub in Miami. They don't give some of the names here. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They just say what the nightclub was. All right.
I wonder if she made some money.
She made coin, yeah. And the other person I had from Business and Science, and it's only a name that, you have to love the name because we grew up with it. Charles E. Entenmann, last of the storied baking family, died at 92 this past year. Working with his brothers and their mother, he helped turn the company that bore their name into a nationally known symbol of sweetness. And do we not all love Entenmann's cakes? Especially
I used to like the lemon cake.
Did you not like the crumb cake?
No, the lemon crumb one. That had the filling of lemon in the middle. I don't know if they still make that.
Yeah.
I love that cake.
Now, when you were a kid, Entenmann's growing up in Connecticut, I guess we saw it, but Viking we had the truck come by and give us sweets and stuff. Remember the truck used to come by and deliver? Did you have Viking?
No, we didn't have that. We were in
Oh.
Southbury. It was a poorer town. We might have had Charles Chips.
We had Charles Chips. We
No, but
still have a
we didn't
can.
have the Viking, but we would go to Cumberland Farms,
Yeah.
which and get an Entenmann's. And if we were going somewhere to someone's house, I always remember my mom saying, if last minute they said, "Oh, let's stop and see the Smiths or something," they'd pull over and you had to go get a Entenmann's cake or a Danish or something to bring in to have coffee. And yeah, I laugh because when I go, there's not Entenmann's down here that I've seen in Delaware, southern Delaware, and it had just started. There were some in Philly, but I often think about it. You know, back then there were not a lot of choices, right? You didn't have a lot of different things you could buy. Now I'm not so sure I would do a store-bought thing like that to someone's house. I'd probably want to go to a real bakery, maybe.
Yes, and that's also just a changing of the
Yeah.
times, right? So, I pulled two from science. The first one was Luc Montagnier, who died at the age of 89, and he was the Nobel Prize winning co-discoverer of the HIV virus. And of course, that happened way back in the late 80s, or actually mid 80s when he discovered it. And I also pulled another one that I thought was fascinating. Sophie Freud, 97. So when I say Freud, you know who her grandfather was, right?
Was it Freud?
Sigmund Freud, yeah.
Wow.
And all you need to hear is this. This is how the Times put it. Critic of her grandfather's gospel. So we can assume that she did not necessarily agree with her grandfather's obsession that everything revolved around moms and sex and everything else. Although, now that you think about it. So those are just some of the people I pulled from the Times piece, but it was
Who would not have gotten certainly the attention that when they do any of these celebrities. It's why we do business birthdays, right? Because
Yes.
all the attention is always on celebrity that died and the celebrities that have passed away, and all these year in review things are generally mostly celebrities or actors or something. And yeah, nobody does one that has the business people. I know the guy I was reading to the guy who started Sodexo Catering.
Yep.
He was French, a multi-billionaire. Some of these things that very successful people that certainly did well in their own right in their own industries, but would not get noticed. So
Yeah, no, totally.
Thanks for sharing some of those.
And I also purposely looked to see how many women were in each category. That was an interesting bellwether. Obviously, in entertainment and media, there were more.
Right.
But when you get to the business and sciences thing, it's very male dominated. I think, well, we're looking at obituaries. I know that things have changed since then, and so we'll see that change over time. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break here on the Focus Group, and when we return, we have a business birthday, unlike what we just went through, which is notable people we have who have passed away in the last year, and we have a shop talk. And Tim, the shop talk came from LGBTQ Nation. So are these are good cities to retire in that happen to be LGBTQ friendly?
Yes, supposedly. So we'll see when we go through the list.
We'll leave it at that.
But,
All right,
yeah.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group, and happy 2023. It's our first show of the new year. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John Nash, now in our 15th year, I'd like to say.
Should we need a graphic that pops up?
I should, yes, now in our 15th year. Have the scroll
15 years of entertainment and news.
of listening, laughing, and learning.
And learning, yeah.
We like to say. And so find out all about us at focusgroupradio.com. You'll find all of our media housed there as well, or along with our 20-minute podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. So you can download all of that for free. So, Mr. Nash, without further ado, we've got our first business birthday for the year.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So right before break, John mentioned how he looked at his list of celebrities that are people who had died in 2022 and paid attention to the females or the number of females. And so interestingly, today, our business birthday is a female. But since we also mentioned we've been doing this for 15 years, we didn't want to repeat. So there was a number, I went back into the archives, and anyone of merit that was born on January 4th, we'd covered already, in my opinion.
Wait,
So-
is in your opinion, the merit part, right?
Well, so for instance, the one guy we've talked about, I think a couple of years we did him Simplot.
Yes,
he was
I remember
the
that,
potato
yeah.
guy from Idaho that did all the McDonald's potatoes and everything, frozen potatoes. I thought we don't need to hear that again. So I
Was his first name George?
I don't know.
Okay,
It may
it doesn't
be.
matter.
It could be, but I don't know. I just remember the last name. So I went and poked around and then got to January 7th, which is Saturday when our show goes out in audio form. Esther Snyder. She was born January 7th in 1920. She died in 2006 at 86 years old. She was the co-founder with her husband of the In-N-Out Burger In-N-Out Burger stores. They're not a franchise, so the In-N-Out hamburgers, which famous on the West Coast. John and I, when we would travel out there, we would often stop either coming or going or sometime in between to get an In-N-Out burger. And she co-founded that in the 70s, I believe it was. I'm going to have to pull it up here to know exactly when. But she met her husband, Harry Snyder, in 1947. And they were both working at a restaurant in Seattle. And they got married, moved to California. They had two sons. And they opened up their first In-N-Out burger in Baldwin Park, California. And it was done in 1948, so it was 74 years ago, which I didn't realize they were around that long.
74 years?
74 years ago. And it's
Wow, okay.
the revenue is over $1 billion a year. It's about $1.1 billion. They have 27,000 employees. And it's a regional chain of fast food. It's privately held, mostly in California and the Southwest. And so she and her husband started it. They chose not to franchise because their opinion was that if they would franchise that, they would lose the food quality and customer consistency.
I guess the idea would be that the different franchisees could source their own stuff. Is that unlike
or
McDonald's?
the franchises would, similar to, I'll use Dunkin' Donuts as an example,
okay.
or McDonald's. You knew when you went to a good McDonald's, but McDonald's, I think, did a great job of making sure you knew if you got a Big Mac in Chicago, it would taste the same in Midtown Manhattan, right?
That's true. Yeah, consistency.
Right. So, but they were concerned that if they went and did the franchise model, that they would lose some of that and just grow too fast. Probably smart in that as a private company, I'm sure they made and are making quite a bit of money. They have well over 400 stores out in the Southwest. So the chain was developed. They had high customer loyalty, they said. It was rated and continues to be rated one of the top fast food restaurants in many customer satisfaction surveys. They also invented the drive-through, which I was surprised
the
about. Well, they
drive-thru.
said they were the first drive-through hamburger stand in California.
Well, okay, I'll buy it.
So they said before then they would, and it allowed drivers to place orders via a two-way speaker system, which we all know is very common. But they said before then, and post-World War II, a lot of places in California and places in the U.S. would have car hops that would come to your car, take the order, then go back and bring the food back. And they came up with the concept of the drive-through hamburger stand. Their first location outside of Los Angeles was in San Diego in 1990. That was their 57th location. And then they opened in Las Vegas. They've opened in a number of areas around California and Nevada. And their son, Rich Snyder, ended up taking over the business, but he was coming from an opening in Nevada. And they were in a little private plane, and they were following a big Boeing 757 into the John Wayne Airport into California and got stuck in the turbulence and crashed and killed everybody on the plane. So that's why now they do this. The Federal Aviation Administration now requires additional distance, an adequate distance between heavy aircraft and light aircraft. Sometimes they follow
Wow,
because
that's kind of crazy. right?
So he, so then when he died in the car crash, his brother, or in the plane crash, his brother Guy Snyder. So Esther and her husband only had 2 kids. So Guy Snyder took over the presidency. He didn't last long, only about 6 years. He died of an overdose of painkillers. So his mother, Esther, again, took over the business. And when she died, they left the business to their granddaughter, and she's now Lindsay. She's the sole heiress to the chain, and she now controls the company. She says she's not going to franchise it. She's going to still keep it privately held. And there was some controversy around, they talked about the different products that they had. And they were in a number of lawsuits with a number of companies that tried to, because they wouldn't franchise them, people wanted to have products like In-N-Out. They were in a number of lawsuits globally where people tried to copy their products. And they talk about Animal Style, the Double Double, which was a double patty. You were allowed to have as many patties as you wanted as your burger. You just had to pay for them. But they stopped it because somebody had gone in, it was probably a radio station, 2004, ordered 100 patties with 100 slices of cheese with one bun. So they stopped it. So the most you can get is 4.
Okay.
You can get 4.
4 seems like a lot to me to begin with.
I think it's an awful lot, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of meat in one burger, yeah.
For the first time in 15 years, they added hot chocolate and marshmallows to the menu in 2018. And they do have a secret menu, but you can find it online where you can do things without a bun, or you could do other sorts of other products that they have. Interestingly, I thought this was funny. Whenever they open a store, particularly in places where palm trees can grow, they always will plant 2 palm trees in the form of an X.
Isn't that funny?
And
you mean they lean, like one leans into the other?
Right,
and
so it would be
goes,
the palm trees and an X. And do you know why?
Either it's a nod to the Mad World movie, because remember at the end of the classic, it was the W that the palm tree. Is that it? Or
well, John, you're so smart. Harry Snyder, one of the co-founders, Esther's husband, his favorite movie was It's a Mad World, and so he had planted these cross palm trees at every. So if you go to an In-N-Out burger, you're likely to see 2
This
cross
is great
palm
trivia.
trees.
This is great trivia. That is hysterical. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did that. It was and then just finishing up here, the chain also had fans from a number of renowned chefs, including Gordon Ramsay, Julia Child, Thomas Keller from the French Laundry, Anthony Bourdain, Ina Garten, and Mario Batali. They said Ramsay loved it so much. He was taping a show in Los Angeles. They had got him some food. He said, embarrassingly, after he ate it, he got in his car and went through the drive-thru and bought more to go home. The guy from the French Laundry, one of the top restaurants in the country or the world, had a big party, and he celebrated the anniversary of his restaurant by having In-N-Out burgers ordered there. Julia Child said it was her favorite chain, and she said she admitted to knowing every location of an In-N-Out burger stop from Santa Barbara to San Francisco. And she had the burgers while she was in the hospital delivered to her in the hospital. Anthony Bourdain listed it as his favorite fast food meal and best restaurant of Los Angeles, which I don't know if that's good or bad. And then Ida Garten said that that again for her it was her favorite fast food restaurant, and she says I don't really eat fast food at all, but when I do go to California, I make an effort to stop there. Some controversies. I think you remember. I think you and I both looked at this once, or you had found it. There's Bible references printed on the underside of some of the wrappers and on the
That's right.
Cups.
Years ago, you and I uncovered that fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've been doing that since the 80s. They said it's a reflection of their Christian beliefs, and then it goes into this whole thing. They were very much Republican and Trump supporters, and I wondered about this because I thought, would this affect you going there?
No.
Similar to Chick-fil-A, right? Everybody said boycott Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Because they were anti-LGBTQ and supporters of Trump. And I thought, I often wonder why companies go this extra step to, like they could have just had those verses on there and maybe ignored it or whatever, but they've doubled down. And I know a lot of companies, you and I recently, when people were working with, want companies to take a stand on some of these things.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And I don't know whether that's smart all the time.
They could be involved in local politics because that would affect zoning and licensing. But I think at the national level, that's a decision that the owner makes, like the guy from Chick-fil-A. and it has consequences, right? I didn't know that about In-N-Out Burger. I just remember one time you and I were coming back from Palm Springs. We were going to L.A. to an event where I think Martina was getting an award.
Mm-hmm.
We got off the highway, we go to In-N-Out Burger, we parked the car, and laying on the embankment, literally in front of us, was someone who looked dead in the bushes.
I remember that.
They were laying with their head down like it was an incline. So we go in, you immediately go to you get to register and you start ordering. He said, before I do this, there's someone laying in the bushes in front of our car. And, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. What's your order?
Yeah, remember that? We thought he was dead. You and I went over. We thought there's a dead guy here. Nobody's paying attention to him.
Oh, yeah. Is it a double-double or a...
And I guess he just lay there, right?
Well, by the time we left, he was either gone or I don't remember if I think he was gone because we would have noted if he was still there. But it was just one of those things where you had you're a very like concerned citizen Boy Scout.
Yeah.
And they were like, whatever. What can we get you?
Yeah. So it's so Esther Snyder, happy birthday to her. There's 358 In-N-Out Burgers: Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, Oregon, Texas, and Utah. They tried to open one in Manhattan. It did not work.
I don't know why.
They don't say why. They don't say what happened, but my guess is it'll be on the radar someday. They were ranked number 28 among America's best employers, according to Forbes, and Glassdoor said that In-N-Out Burger was ranked number 8 on its annual list of the 50 best places to work in the U.S. and the U.K.
That's pretty high up. And for those who don't know, Glassdoor ranks. It's a ranking system that former employees or current employees actually feed into. So not bad. Not bad.
Happy birthday, Esther. Now, have you been to you and Bob were? When's the last time you went out to San Diego to a wedding, right?
Yeah, and we did not see.
You didn't go to In-N-Out?
No. And we would have too, because that's one of the little pilgrimages we do when we're out west. More prevalent in L.A. probably, right?
Yeah. No. So I try to, as we say, we try to go to one. So next time we go to L.A., John, we'll have to, or the Springs, we'll have to go.
You got it. Yeah.
So hey, we mentioned earlier on in the program, we have a shop talk today, which highlights the top 5 LGBTQ mid-sized cities to consider for retirement. And this came from LGBTQ Nation, and there was a study that was done by a group. This is part of a series. They did small, medium, and large cities. This is part 3, where they're exploring mid-sized cities, where they said it was the best or most affordable and accepting towns for people to retire in that were looking for an LGBTQ-friendly environment. They said, as baby boomers continue to retire at record rates, the number of people 65 and older is expected to double by 2050 to 88 million. It's quite a bit. And so they said, as you're planning ahead or looking for places to retire, you should consider some of these cities. The Human Rights Campaign gives them a municipal equality index. I think they all got 100 of
yes,
these
that's
5.
what the article said, yeah.
And well, let's go through the list, and then I'll ask you what you think, or maybe we'll just talk about retirement in cities in general. So what was the first one that they
First
highlighted?
one up is Austin, Texas. Significant LGBTQ plus population, excellent health care or an access to health care, and a lot of culture. Austin would be the obvious choice of any Texas city for anybody who's gay. I could be wrong, but it has always had a very progressive reputation. I've enjoyed my 1 or 2 visits there quite a lot. So it made sense to me. The bigger problem that I have with this is the fact that it's located in Texas, and I love our Texas listeners, but a lot of interesting stuff comes out of that state politically. So that's an interesting one for me.
Yeah, our largest audience over the 15 years is Texas. Huge population: Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. I used to travel to Texas quite a bit for work, and certainly have a lot of friends from Texas. I never understood the fascination with Austin. I might have just not. Maybe it's because I was on business. Well, we did work with Lance Armstrong and . So I was there under different. I was not there having a good time.
No, you're there for business.
Yeah. And but they used to always equate Austin with places like Madison, Wisconsin, or Bloomington, Indiana, or something where they would have these big universities and a smart, well-educated populace. So It's another place I probably need to revisit because Austin shows up on a lot of these lists. And it's
yeah.
affordable to live in as well. So
And a lot of people are transplants there, so you have a really diverse community.
yeah. The second one was a surprise, I think, probably, and was a surprise to me. Toledo, Ohio. So it's known as the City of Glass. So they've instituted an inclusionary policy at the local level that includes a ban on conversion therapy, a domestic partnership registry, and anti-discrimination protections. It's an affordable place to live. They said the average home price is about $100,000, which, across the country.
That's amazing, right?
Unheard of, right?
Yeah.
Has good health care, a high number of hospitals and doctors per capita, scored well on the HRC perfect score on the HRC Municipal Equality Index. And it's right, a quick drive probably to Detroit and to Cleveland.
So you have two other cities you can
major
visit
metropolitan
as well.
areas, yeah. In Ohio, I went to school in Ohio, as you know, but further south in Marietta. And I like Ohio, but Ohio is another one of those, almost like Texas now, right? There's certain pockets. Jim Jordan, for instance, is from Ohio.
Yep.
So you take that with a grain of salt. But Toledo, John. Toledo, Ohio.
Toledo, Ohio. There you go. Third on their list was Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida. It's not the first gay destination that comes to mind for Florida. I think many people would think South Beach, but probably even more nowadays, Wilton Manor and Fort Lauderdale as being the ground zero for LGBTQ+. The city of Tampa has a population of around 400,000, while the larger four-county region includes St. Petersburg, which is across Tampa Bay, of over 3 million. It's an area that has a lot of historic landmarks, some great culture, aka some film festivals, other stuff that goes on there. And the LGBTQ plus population of Tampa, St. Petersburg tops out at about 6%, one of the highest in the U.S. Retirement communities are abundant, as are healthcare option, and it's beach weather year-round. Cultural destinations include the world-class Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. Overall, the cost of living in Tampa, St. Pete is low, and there's no state income tax in Florida. I'm just going to say this. I mean, no insult to anybody, but I'm not intending to retire to Florida.
No. I'm surprised. Maybe I'm not surprised. I would have thought Key West would have popped up here a little higher for Florida, but I think it's hard to get to.
But also, wasn't the criteria here mid-size?
Yeah, you're right.
And also affordability. And Key West is small, but it also strikes me as a pretty... We know a lot of people who go there.
You didn't like it when you went there. You hightailed it out.
It wasn't like South Beach, and it certainly wasn't like Fort Lauderdale. In fact, I couldn't find a beach. There was rocky stuff everywhere. It was charming, but it wasn't for me.
Charming. You nasty. Charming. It wasn't charming.
And
it's horrible.
I'll say this.
Didn't
Bob
you
and
Trish head out of there at 1, 2, 3?
Oh,
you left early.
Trish was ready to get back in that car and head to South Beach for a larger population. We had dinner over the holidays with neighbors of ours upstate, and Carol and John, her husband John, noted smartly that Florida is problematic from one big thing, and that is called climate change.
Yeah.
A lot of it is low-lying land, and I don't know whether people are walking around with blinders on. I mean, when the sea goes up, it's gonna go up. We know it's gonna go up. We're losing ice in the North and the South Poles. Already in Miami, sometimes it's a daily event. Like there's flooding in the streets at high tide. So I don't know. Yeah. I just think about that.
I did not know this, but I'll tell you, is that Delaware, where I live now, is the lowest lying state in the U.S. I was unaware of that. And everything that we do and everything that's talked about here is related to climate change. Because of the state with the lowest. And there's it's flat. It's the land God ironed. And so, that's a big deal. That's a big, big concern.
If you're going to retire somewhere and you're going to be there for 10, 20 years, could you imagine if the water starts lapping at your doorstep? Yeah, anyway.
As a sidebar to this retirement thing, I read something this past weekend where they said kids that are born today. Did you see this article?
No, but I think I know where you're going.
But they said how long they would live. Do you know what they said the average lifespan would be?
Has it decreased?
No.
97.
Nope. Higher.
Over 100?
Higher.
105?
Higher.
110?
Higher.
Well, you got to tell me now.
150.
Oh, I don't
They
believe
said
that.
kids that are born today will live, on average, they said, to 150 years old. And they said
That's a lot of assuming.
I'm just telling you what I
Okay,
read.
Okay.
Now, whether it's true or not, I didn't read it off TikTok, but they said that it really would have to change what people think of people that are aging. For instance, people that we know are friends in their late 50s, early 60s, were very different than our grandparents' generation. People that age, right, look very different.
That's true.
Not as
yeah.
And life expectancy has gone up. But I thought, you could not, if you're going to live to 150, you can't retire at 62 or 67.
No. Now you're retiring at like 102.
100. I'm going to retire at 100.
If, yeah. Because
And maybe 100 will be like when it's 40. Can you imagine you're 100, you're bopping around like you're 40? Because what did they say? 40 was the new, or 50 was the new 40, or 60 is the new 50. Anyway. As we age, we do that. So number 4, Mr. Nash, after that sidebar, is your hometown, where you were born, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, great city.
City of bridges.
Uh-huh.
And Pittsburgh is regularly ranked as one of the most livable cities in the U.S. I love Pittsburgh.
I do too.
So as they say, City of Bridges, there are 400 bridges that crisscross the city. It is in a beautiful area, a beautiful part of the country. Interestingly, as part of Pennsylvania, it is nothing like Philadelphia, which is very much an East Coast city. Pittsburgh really definitely has that kind of Midwestern, comfortable, friendly vibe, more so than Philly, I think.
Agreed.
If I was to, yeah. And so they got a perfect score with the HRC, and has a number
also,
of great...
noted in the article that SAGE, which is an organization for us aging gay people, has a center out there, the PERSAD Center and Prime Timers, and that's a good resource to have if you're going to be gay and retiring somewhere. And they have a perfect score on the Municipal Equality Index. So, hey, look, Pittsburgh, I was there recently.
Fun city.
Fun city, beautiful city. I missed the streetcars when I was growing up. That's what I would visit my grandparents. We would go. My granddad would take me on all the electric streetcars, which was fun. Okay, number 5.
Has Bob been to Pittsburgh?
I don't believe so. No.
You should.
That would be a fun
trip. You guys should
trip.
take a weekend trip out there. It's not long to drive. I mean,
know that now that you say that, it's an excellent idea. It's an excellent trip.
It's a good weekend getaway. You guys get away for 2-3 nights. And
maybe we could find that glass bridge somewhere out in the. Remember, we were going to do a road trip there. It was an old rail bridge that burnt
on your way out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I might even meet you out there because I love Pittsburgh and I've got a lot of friends there. It'd be a fun weekend getaway.
That's a great idea. All right, we're going to one of the cities. Number 5 on our list was Tucson, Arizona. I've been to Tucson myself. I've done some cycling there. Has a great score on the HRC MEI, the Metropolitan Equality Index. It's a very interesting area to retire in. There's lots to do. You're not too far from other places in Arizona to visit. And as I said, I've cycled there, and it's just,
Isn't it hot?
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. It's desert heat, but it gets hot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And number 6 is a place John and I stopped in on when we were doing some work with Volkswagen, did some driving around the West. And Boise, Idaho, population of 235,000. Beautiful, beautiful location, beautiful setting. However, it's a 500-mile drive to the nearest significant metropolitan area, which would be either in the west, Portland, Oregon, or going east would be Salt Lake City to the south. And but it's a nice college town. They said they have a very active nightlife. And a great place if you were wanting to retire, looking for a place to retire. They also, I remember somebody saying Idaho, and I believe Boise has the highest amount of people with graduate and MBA degrees too, which is pretty cool. I loved when we were in Boise. I'm not sure. A lot of Hollywood people, I guess, go there and they have houses or whatever, but not easy to get to.
No.
And this is
why. And it's
why,
changed.
Right.
It's
and
changed.
They said there's. They recommended these 5 cities and then one far flung that nobody would think of, and I believe Boise is the one that they're
because of its distance from other metropolitan areas. Yeah.
Now, if I had to say, John, I had to force you for a year. You had to go somewhere and live for a year.
Oh, it's so easy.
This list of 6. Where would you go?
You could choose it for me.
I'm not so sure I could.
I'd go to Pittsburgh.
Would you go to Pittsburgh? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I think I'd probably do Pittsburgh as well, although I would consider doing Boise. There was something about Boise when we were there I liked.
I agree with you.
I don't know what it is, but it was different, right?
We were in an area of the city that was probably a little more college-y, a little more progressive, kind of like the Village here in New York. We stayed at a really funky,
was it called the Modern or something? What was the name of that hotel?
Yeah. And it was like a motel that they redid, and we had the best Manhattans there, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and we had a great dinner that night, walked around. I wish we had been able to stay longer. We were on a pretty rigid.
Yeah, there were a couple places I wish we could have stayed longer, but
like one time when we did a cross country trip, we arrived in Oklahoma City, was it right? Mm-hmm. And we did an overnight July 4th. We saw it was an amazing experience. I mean, that was one I would have stayed another 2 or 3 days.
Surprise to both of us about
total surprise
about Oklahoma City. We were both surprised about that. But so that was a list of cities. Again, it was. You want to run through them?
I shall. Let me call it up. Get it back here in front of me. Here we go. Okay, so the first on the list of the not too big and not too small, 5 mid-sized cities to retire. And again, these are all cities that got the seal of approval from the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Quality Index. The first was Austin, Texas. The second was Toledo, Ohio. The third, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida. Pittsburgh, PA, the town of my birth. Tucson, Arizona. And the last, which they threw in here, was Boise, Idaho, which Tim and I really liked a lot. It is farther away from other municipal areas than the previous cities I mentioned, but there you go.
Yep. So that's a interesting list. I don't think if I was to put together that list myself, I'd have picked those 5.
I would not have, but data drove it. It was a data-driven list.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we want to thank you for joining us on our maiden voyage of 2023. As Tim has said previously in the broadcast, our 15th year of doing the focus group, and also TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast. Learn more about us at focusgroupradio.com, and you'll also learn about our partners and sponsors, including Deep Discount. You can get to Deep Discount by going to our site, focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the Deep Discount logo. I didn't see too much bad driving, but I'm going to throw it up here on the screen, and we always say, don't text and drive, arrive alive, leave the phone down, nothing's that important. We want to wish you guys, again, welcome to the new year. I hope you had a great holiday season, and we'll see you next week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.